The silver moonlight felt cold against my skin as I stood at the edge of the ceremonial clearing, my pale blonde hair catching the wind like threads of moonlight itself. The scent of pine and damp earth filled my lungs, mixed with something sharper, the musk of power, of dominance, of wolves who knew their place in the hierarchy. And I knew mine too, at the very bottom. The lunar ceremony happened once every 5 years, when all the packs in the northern territories gathered to renew their bonds, to witness challenges, and, most importantly, to allow unmated wolves to find their destined pairs. I was 23, and still without a mate, still without the bond that would give me purpose, protection, a place to belong. My stepmother had made sure to remind me of that failure every single day since my father died 2 years ago. "Stand up straight, Vera," she'd hissed at me before we left the house. "Try not to embarrass us more than you already do just by existing." My stepbrother, Derek, had laughed. That cruel, sharp sound that had become the soundtrack of my life since father's death. He was everything I wasn't: strong, confident, respected. His wolf was powerful, his position in our pack secure. Mine was complicated. I pulled my thin shawl tighter around my shoulders, though it did nothing against the real cold. The one that came from being surrounded by hundreds of wolves and feeling utterly alone. The clearing was massive, ringed by ancient oaks, whose branches seemed to reach toward the full moon, like supplicants begging for mercy. Bonfires blazed at cardinal points, their flames casting dancing shadows across faces both familiar and strange. The ceremony ground was divided by invisible but absolute lines. At the center, on a raised stone platform, stood the visiting alphas and their highest-ranking members. My own alpha, Gregory, stood among them, his chest puffed with pride. To the sides, arranged by rank, stood the rest of us. I found myself pushed further and further back with each arriving group, until I was practically in the tree line, my mother's locket pressed against my chest beneath my dress, the only thing of hers I had left. She'd died when I was 7, but I still remembered her voice, soft and certain. "Vera, my little moon child, you are stronger than you know. When the world tries to make you small, remember, the moon doesn't compete with the sun. It simply shines in the darkness, and that's when people need it most." I touched the locket through the fabric, drawing what little comfort I could from the memory. "Attention!" Alpha Gregory's voice boomed across the clearing. "The Alpha King approaches!" A hush fell so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. The Alpha King, ruler of all packs in the northern territories, the one wolf whose word was absolute law. I'd never seen him before, few had. He rarely left his fortress in the mountains, ruling through representatives and enforcers. Rumors painted him as brutal, merciless, a king who'd taken his throne through blood and held it through fear. The crowd parted like water, and he walked through. My breath caught. He was tall, with dark hair that fell just past his shoulders, and eyes that seemed to catch the firelight and hold it. Amber, like whiskey, like warning. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, deadly and precise. He wore black, simple but clearly expensive, moving with a predator's grace that made every other wolf in the clearing look clumsy by comparison. But it wasn't his appearance that made my heart stutter. It was the weight of his presence, the way the very air seemed to thicken around him. Power rolled off him in waves, primal and absolute. This was a wolf who'd never known submission, who'd never bent his neck to anyone, and yet there was something else. Something I caught for just a moment when his eyes swept across the crowd. A flash of profound loneliness, of exhaustion that went bone deep. It was gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. "Alpha King Nathaniel," Gregory groveled, practically prostrating himself. "We are honored by your presence." The king, Nathaniel, barely acknowledged him. His gaze continued scanning the crowd, and I found myself shrinking back further into the shadows. I didn't want those eyes on me. I didn't want anyone's eyes on me. "Let the ceremony begin," Nathaniel said, his voice deep and carrying effortlessly across the space. What followed was a blur of ritual and tradition. Wolves pledged loyalty, disputes were settled, challenges were issued and resolved. I watched it all from my corner of darkness, feeling more invisible with each passing moment. which was exactly how I preferred it. Then came the part I'd been dreading, the presentation of unmated wolves. One by one, young wolves stepped forward to be acknowledged, to put themselves on display for potential mates. The females wore their finest dresses, hair styled elaborately, practically preening. The males stood tall, showing off their strength, their worthiness. "Vera!" My stepmother's shrill whisper cut through my thoughts. "Get up there! Now!" I shook my head slightly. I'd told her I wasn't going to present myself. The humiliation of standing up there, alone, while no one showed even a flicker of interest. I couldn't do it again. "You embarrassing little..." Derek was suddenly beside me, his hand clamped around my arm hard enough to bruise. Mother said, "Move." "Derek, please," I whispered. "I don't want to." "I don't care what you want." He dragged me forward, and I stumbled, my thin shoes catching on roots and rocks. Wolves turned to stare, some with pity, most with disdain. The girl who couldn't shift properly. The weak link. The burden. Derek shoved me toward the platform, and I barely caught myself from falling. My face burned with humiliation as I climbed the steps, keeping my eyes down. Just get through this. Just survive it. "Name?" The ceremony master, an elderly wolf named Thomas, looked at me with something almost like sympathy. "Vera Ashwood," I managed, my voice barely audible. "Speak up," Derek called from the crowd, followed by snickers. I cleared my throat, trying again. "Vera Ashwood, 23, of the Clearwater Pack." Thomas nodded and began the traditional recitation of my lineage, my status, my lack of accomplishments. Each word felt like a small cut. I focused on my mother's locket, on her words. "The moon shines in the darkness." When Thomas finished, there was silence. No one stepped forward. No one showed interest. I'd expected nothing less, but it still hurt. Still made me want to disappear into the earth itself. "Well," Thomas said gently. "Thank you for presenting yourself, Miss Ashwood." "Wait." Derek's voice rang out, dripping with false concern. "I think everyone should know the full truth about my dear stepsister." My stomach dropped. "No. Please no." He climbed onto the platform, his smile vicious. "You see, Vera here has a defect. Her wolf is weak, barely present. She can hardly shift, and when she does, well," he laughed. "Let's just say she's more of a liability than an asset to any pack." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. "Derek," I whispered. "Please stop." "Please stop," he mimicked in a high-pitched whine. Then his expression hardened. "You're a disgrace to our family name, to our pack. Maybe if you'd just disappear, that's enough." Alpha Gregory's voice was stern. "Derek, step down." But Derek wasn't finished. His hand shot out, and before I could react, he slapped me across the face, hard enough that my head snapped to the side, hard enough that I tasted copper. The clearing went utterly silent. I stood frozen, my cheek burning, my ears ringing. Through the shock, I heard gasps, whispers. But what shocked me more was the sudden shift in the air, a pressure so intense it made my knees weak, a rage so palpable it felt like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. "Touch her again," came a voice like thunder and silk and death itself, "and you die." I looked up through tear-blurred vision to see Alpha King Nathaniel standing at the base of the platform, and his eyes, those amber eyes, were fixed on Derek with a promise of violence that made my stepbrother go pale. But when Nathaniel's gaze shifted to me, something in his expression changed, softened, became almost reverent. "Mine," he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Then louder, his voice carrying across the clearing, "She is mine." The world tilted. My heart hammered. And as Nathaniel climbed the platform steps toward me, moving with that lethal grace, I realized that everything was about to change. The next morning, I woke in a room I didn't recognize. For a disorienting moment, I thought I was still dreaming. The bed beneath me was too soft, the sheets too fine. the ceiling too high and painted with intricate designs of wolves running beneath a silver moon. Then the memories crashed back, Derek's hand striking my face, the gasps of the crowd, and those amber eyes burning into mine as Nathaniel declared me his. I sat up slowly, my cheek still tender where Derek had hit me. Someone had tended to it during the night. There was a faint smell of healing salve, and the swelling had gone down considerably. I was wearing a nightgown I'd never seen before, soft as water against my skin, and my blonde hair had been brushed and braided. Panic fluttered in my chest. Where was I? What had happened after Nathaniel's declaration? I remembered fragments, being led away from the platform, my stepmother's furious face, Alpha Gregory trying to speak but being silenced by a single look from the Alpha King. Nathaniel's hand on the small of my back, surprisingly gentle. A car, sleek and black. Then, nothing. I must have fallen asleep from sheer emotional exhaustion. A knock at the door made me jump. "Miss Ashwood," a woman's voice, kind but formal. "May I enter?" Yes," I managed. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s, with warm brown eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a tray laden with breakfast, more food than I usually ate in a day. "Good morning," she said with a genuine smile. "I'm Margaret, head of household staff here at Shadowpine Keep. His Majesty asked me to ensure you were comfortable." She set the tray on a small table by the window. "How are you feeling?" Shadowpine Keep, the Alpha King's fortress. I was in the Alpha King's fortress. Where exactly am I? I mean, which room? Margaret's smile widened slightly. "The East Wing, dear. The Queen's chambers." The Queen's chambers. The words hit me like cold water. But I'm not. He just said I was his, but that doesn't mean... I couldn't finish the sentence. My mind was spinning too fast. "Eat first," Margaret said gently, pulling out a chair for me. "You'll think more clearly with food in your stomach. His Majesty has requested your presence in his study at 10 o'clock. That gives you 2 hours to prepare." She left before I could ask any of the 1,000 questions crowding my tongue. I picked at the breakfast. Fresh fruit, warm bread, eggs prepared with herbs I couldn't name, but my stomach was too knotted to eat much. Through the window, I could see the keep's grounds stretching out below. It was built into the mountainside, with training yards, gardens, and what looked like a small village within the walls. Wolves moved about their morning routines, and I felt another wave of unreality. Yesterday morning, I'd been in my cramped attic room at my stepmother's house. And now I was here, in a palace, in the Queen's chambers. A queen without a crown, a queen who couldn't even shift properly. By the time Margaret returned to help me dress, my anxiety had crystallized into something sharp and painful in my chest. She'd brought several options, but I chose the simplest, a deep blue dress that reminded me of twilight, with long sleeves and a modest neckline. I needed armor, even if it was just fabric. "You look lovely," Margaret said, studying me with an appraising eye. "His Majesty chose well. Did he, though?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "I'm nobody. I'm weak. My own pack barely tolerates me." Margaret's expression softened with something like understanding. "Perhaps that's exactly why he chose you." Before I could ask what she meant, she was guiding me through corridors of stone and wood, past tapestries depicting wolf history, past guards who nodded respectfully, to me, which felt absurd. We climbed a spiral staircase and emerged into a hallway lined with windows overlooking the mountains. Margaret stopped before a heavy oak door. His study. "Knock twice, then enter." My hand shook as I raised it to knock. "Come in," came Nathaniel's voice from within. The study was exactly what I'd expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, thousands of them, their spines showing wear from actual use. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, covered in papers and maps. But what caught my attention was the wall of windows opposite the door, offering a view so breathtaking it made my breath catch. Mountains and forests, stretching to the horizon, all painted in morning gold. Nathaniel stood at those windows, his back to me, hands clasped behind him. He wore simple clothes again, dark pants and a fitted shirt, but somehow looked more regal than if he'd been draped in furs and crowns. "Close the door," he said without turning. I did, my heart hammering. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared out at his kingdom. I studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Up close, away from the ceremony's chaos, I could see he was younger than I'd first thought. Perhaps 30, though his eyes held centuries of weight. "Do you know why I attend the lunar ceremonies?" he finally asked. I shook my head, then realized he couldn't see me. "No, Your Majesty. Call me Nathaniel." He turned then, and those amber eyes found mine. "I attend because it's tradition. Because showing my face reminds the packs that they serve a real person, not just an idea. But mostly, I attend out of obligation. I've never enjoyed them." I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed silent. He moved closer, each step deliberate. Last night I was standing there, watching the ritual, thinking about how much I wanted to leave. And then your stepbrother dragged you forward. Heat flooded my face at the memory. "I saw you trying to make yourself invisible," Nathaniel continued. "Saw you focusing on something at your chest. A necklace?" His eyes dropped to where my mother's locket rested. "You were terrified, humiliated, but you kept your head up. You survived it. Barely," I whispered. "Survival is victory when you're facing impossible odds." He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell pine and something darker, like smoke and secrets. "Then he struck you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nathaniel's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I saw the predator beneath the king. "I've killed wolves for less," he said quietly. "The only reason your stepbrother still breathes is because ending him quickly would have been mercy, and he doesn't deserve mercy." A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from fear. "Why did you claim me?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "You could have just punished Derek." "You didn't have to say I was yours." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching mine. "Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by thousands of wolves and still feel completely alone?" The question was so unexpected, so vulnerable, that it took me a moment to respond. "Yes," I breathed. "I know exactly what that's like. I thought you might." Something in his expression eased, became less guarded. "When you stood on that platform, I saw something in you, a strength that everyone else missed, a light that refuses to go out no matter how much darkness tries to smother it." My throat tightened. No one had ever seen me that way. No one had ever looked at me and seen anything but weakness. "I also saw someone who understood loneliness," Nathaniel continued. "Someone who might understand what it means to rule wolves who respect your power but don't know you, who see a king but not a person." "So you claimed me out of loneliness?" I couldn't keep the slight edge from my voice. "No." He stepped closer, and I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. "I claimed you because when your stepbrother struck you, something in me broke, something primal and absolute. Every instinct I have screamed to protect you, to claim you, to ensure no one ever hurt you again." "The mate bond," I whispered. "Perhaps, or perhaps something deeper." His hand lifted slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers brushed my injured cheek with a gentleness that made my eyes sting. "I won't force you into anything, Vera. You're safe here, and you're free, but I would like the chance to know you, to see if what I felt last night was real. And if it's not," the question came out shakier than I intended, "if I'm not what you think I am, then we'll figure that out together." He dropped his hand. "But I don't think I'm wrong about you." A knock at the door interrupted us. Nathaniel's expression shifted back to the mask of kingship. "Enter." The door opened to reveal a man I recognized from the ceremony. Nathaniel's beta, a wolf named Silas with silver-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Behind him stood two others, a woman with midnight black hair and predatory grace, and a younger man with scars across his jaw. "Your Majesty," Silas said, his gaze flicking to me with obvious curiosity. "The council is requesting an emergency session." "About what?" "About her." The scarred man's voice was cold. "About your sudden claiming of an Omega from a minor pack." The word Omega hit me like a physical blow. It was what they called wolves like me. Weak, barely able to shift, at the bottom of the hierarchy. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was more than that label, but hearing it here, in front of these powerful wolves, made shame burn through me. "Rydian." Nathaniel's voice was a warning. "Watch your tone." "I'm simply stating facts, my lord." Rydian's eyes met mine, assessing and finding me wanting. "The council is concerned, as are many of us." The woman, who I would later learn was named Celeste, Nathaniel's head enforcer, spoke up. "What Rydian is clumsily trying to say is that your claiming has political implications. The other alphas are confused. Some are offended that you chose an Omega over their daughters. I don't recall asking for their permission." Nathaniel's voice was silk over steel. "Of course not," Silas interjected smoothly, "but perhaps it would be wise to address the council's concerns, to explain—" "I explain nothing." Nathaniel's eyes flashed. "She is mine. That's all they need to know." Silence fell, heavy and uncomfortable. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. This was exactly what I'd feared. Becoming a source of conflict, a problem to be solved. "Perhaps," I said quietly, surprised by my own voice, "I should meet with them, the council." 4 pairs of eyes turned to me. "That's not necessary," Nathaniel said, "but it might help." I forced myself to look at Rydian, then Celeste, then Silas. "I know I'm not what anyone expected. I know I'm not strong, but I'm here, and if my presence is causing problems, maybe I can help solve them." Celeste's lips curved into something that might have been approval. "She has courage, at least." "Courage won't matter when they tear her apart with questions," Rydian muttered. "Then they'll answer to me," Nathaniel growled. But I could see it in his eyes, the weight of leadership, the burden of balancing what he wanted with what his kingdom needed. He'd claimed me on impulse, driven by instinct, and that mysterious connection between us. Now reality was crashing in. "Let me try," I said, meeting Nathaniel's gaze. "What's the worst that could happen?" Silas actually laughed at that. "Oh, little Omega, you really don't know our council, do you?" As it turned out, I was about to find out. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. High ceilings disappeared into shadow, and the walls were lined with the mounted heads of prey, deer, elk, even a bear, all testament to the hunting prowess of generations of wolves. A massive table dominated the center, carved from a single piece of ancient oak, surrounded by high-backed chairs that looked more like thrones. Torches burned in iron sconces, casting flickering shadows that made everything feel unstable, dangerous. 15 pairs of eyes turned to me as I entered with Nathaniel at my side. The council was composed of the most powerful wolves in the kingdom, alphas from the major packs, elder statesmen who'd served for decades, warriors whose scars told stories of survival. And then there was me, a 23-year-old Omega in a borrowed dress trying not to shake. "Gentlemen, ladies," Nathaniel said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "I believe you requested this meeting." An older man at the far end of the table stood. He had iron-gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. "Alpha King, we requested a meeting with you, not with her." "Counselor Bernard," Nathaniel said coolly, "if your concern is about Vera, then she should be present to hear it." Bernard's jaw tightened. "Very well. Let's speak plainly then. Your Majesty, your sudden claiming of this girl has created chaos. Alpha Gregory is furious that you've taken one of his pack members without negotiation. Alpha Helena believes you've insulted her daughter, who was prepared to present herself to you. And frankly, none of us understand why you've chosen an Omega when you could have any female in the kingdom." Each word was a carefully placed knife, designed to cut without seeming overtly hostile. I felt my face heat, but I kept my chin up, remembering my mother's words. The moon doesn't compete with the sun. "Are you finished?" Nathaniel asked, his tone bored. "Not quite." This came from a woman halfway down the table. Alpha Helena herself, apparently. She was beautiful in a sharp, predatory way, with auburn hair and calculating green eyes. We're concerned about the bloodline, Your Majesty. An Omega cannot produce strong heirs. She cannot even shift properly, I'm told. How can she possibly be your queen? The word queen made my stomach drop. I hadn't let myself think that far ahead, hadn't let myself imagine what being claimed by the Alpha King actually meant. My choice of mate is not subject to council approval, Nathaniel said, and there was an edge to his voice now. A warning, of course not. Silas interjected smoothly from his position beside Nathaniel. But perhaps the lady herself might address some of these concerns. All eyes swiveled to me. My mouth went dry. Nathaniel's hand found the small of my back. A brief touch, there and gone. But it steadied me. I drew in a breath and forced myself to speak. You're right, I said, and my voice only shook a little. I'm not strong. I can barely shift, and when I do, my wolf is small and weak. I have no political connections, no powerful family, no accomplishments worth noting. I saw several council members exchange glances, as if I'd just confirmed everything they'd suspected. But, I continued, I'm also not asking to be here. I didn't scheme or plot or manipulate my way into the Alpha King's attention. He claimed me, not the other way around. So perhaps your questions should be directed at him, not at me. Silence fell. I couldn't tell if I'd made things better or worse. Then Celeste, who stood against the wall with the other enforcers, actually smiled. She's not wrong. Bernard's face reddened. This is highly irregular. Everything about me is irregular, counselor. Nathaniel's voice cut through the room like a blade. I killed my way to this throne when I was 19 years old. I've broken tradition more times than I can count, and I've kept this kingdom safe and prosperous for over a decade. So when I tell you that Vera is mine, that she will be my queen, you will accept it. Not because you understand it, but because I have commanded it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. This was the Alpha King the rumors spoke of, absolute, merciless, unquestionable. However, Nathaniel continued, his tone shifting slightly, I understand your concerns about her. Integration into court life. Therefore, Vera will undergo training. Celeste will teach her combat and self-defense. Silas will tutor her in pack politics and history, and she will prove herself worthy of her position. My head snapped toward him. Training? Combat? No one had mentioned any of this. A trial period then, Bernard said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. To see if she's capable. Not a trial, Nathaniel corrected coldly, a transition. The outcome is not in question, but I could see it in the council members' faces. They thought I would fail. They were already planning for it, already calculating what would happen when the weak little Omega couldn't keep up with their expectations. The meeting continued for another hour. Discussions of border disputes and trade agreements that I barely followed. I stood beside Nathaniel's chair, feeling increasingly like a decoration, a problem to be managed. When it finally ended, I was exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. You handled that well, Nathaniel said as we walked back through the corridors. I humiliated myself, I countered. You spoke truth. That's not humiliation. He stopped, turning to face me. Vera, I know I've thrown you into deep water, but I meant what I said. You're stronger than they think. What if I'm not? The question came out smaller than I intended. What if I fail your training? What if I prove them all right? His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. Then we'll deal with it. Together. The gesture was so gentle, so at odds with the ruthless king I'd just witnessed in the council chamber, that it made my breath catch. There were two sides to Nathaniel, I was beginning to realize, the mask he wore for the world and something softer underneath, something that only appeared in moments like this. Get some rest, he said, dropping his hand. Your training begins tomorrow. Tomorrow came far too quickly. I was woken before dawn by Celeste, who apparently believed in the philosophy of throw her in the deep end and see if she swims. She led me to the training yards, where the morning air was sharp with cold and the ground was still damp with dew. Can you fight? Celeste asked, circling me like a predator assessing prey. No. Can you defend yourself? Not really. Can you run? Yes? Celeste's smile was sharp. Good, because that's what you'll be doing a lot of. Run. For the next 2 hours, I ran. Around the training yard, through obstacle courses, up and down stairs until my lungs burned and my legs shook. Celeste ran beside me, barely winded, occasionally barking instructions or corrections. When I finally collapsed, gasping, she crouched beside me. "You're weak," she said bluntly. "But you didn't quit. That counts for something." Over the following days, a brutal routine emerged. Dawn meant combat training with Celeste, who taught me basic defensive moves and made me practice until my muscles screamed. Mid-morning was with Silas, learning pack histories, political alliances, the intricate web of power that held the kingdom together. Afternoons were spent with Margaret, learning court etiquette, proper forms of address, how to navigate the treacherous waters of noble politics, and through it all, I was watched, judged, whispered about. I heard the servants talking when they thought I couldn't hear. "She'll never last. The king will tire of her." It's cruel, really, giving her hope like this. The other nobles were worse. They smiled to my face with cold politeness, but I felt their disdain like a physical weight. At dinners, formal affairs where I sat at Nathaniel's side, feeling desperately out of place, they would ask pointed questions designed to expose my ignorance, to highlight the vast gulf between us. "Tell me, Miss Ashwood," one lady said, her tone dripping with false sweetness, "what are your thoughts on the proposed treaty with the Eastern Pax?" I had no idea there was a proposed treaty with the Eastern Pax. "I'm still learning about such matters," I said carefully, the phrase Silas had taught me for exactly these situations. "Of course you are," she replied, and the pity in her voice was worse than open contempt. But there were unexpected moments of grace, too. One evening, about 2 weeks into my new life, I found myself in the Keep's library, a massive room that had quickly become my sanctuary. I was curled in a window seat, reading about the history of the Northern Territories, when I heard footsteps. "You're here late," Nathaniel said, emerging from between the shelves. I started, nearly dropping my book. "I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone else. I can leave." "Stay." He settled into a chair near my window seat, and in the lamplight, he looked tired. The weight of kingship showed in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "I come here sometimes when I need to think. It's one of the few places I can be. Just myself." "I understand that," I said quietly. For a while, we sat in comfortable silence, him reviewing papers, me reading. It was strange and somehow intimate, this quiet companionship. No demands, no expectations, just presence. "You're doing well with your training," he said eventually. "Celeste says you're improving." "Celeste says I'm slightly less hopeless than I was 2 weeks ago," I corrected, which I think is her version of a compliment. Nathaniel's lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. That's high praise, coming from her. "Why did you choose her to train me?" I asked. "She terrifies me, because she's the best, and because she doesn't coddle. You need someone who will push you, not protect you from difficulty." His eyes met mine. "And because she knows what it's like to be underestimated." I wanted to ask more, but something in his expression made me hold back. Instead, I said, "Tell me something true." He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Something true about you. Something real." I closed my book. "Everyone sees the Alpha King, the ruthless ruler. But who are you when you're not wearing that mask?" For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I'm tired," he said quietly. "I've been tired for a very long time. This throne, this power, it costs more than anyone sees. And sometimes I wonder if it's worth it." The vulnerability in those words, the raw honesty, made my chest ache. "Why do you keep doing it then?" I asked. "Because wolves need a leader, because without order there's only chaos." He leaned back, eyes distant. "And because I made a promise, once, to someone who believed I could be more than just another violent wolf fighting for dominance. I won't break that promise." "Who was it?" I asked softly. "Who made you promise?" But he shook his head. "Another time, perhaps." We fell back into silence, but something had shifted between us. A door had opened, just a crack, and I'd glimpsed the person behind the crown. It was Rydian who shattered the fragile peace I'd been building. 3 weeks into my training, I was walking through the keep's gardens, a rare moment of solitude, when I found him waiting on the path. The scarred warrior watched me approach with barely concealed contempt. "Omega," he said, the word of insult on his tongue. "Rydian." I tried to step around him, but he moved to block me. "How long do you think this will last?" he asked. "This fantasy that you can be our queen?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But Nathaniel claimed me, not you. So it's not really your concern." His eyes flashed. "Everything that affects my king is my concern. I've served him for 8 years, fought beside him, bled for him. And then you show up, weak, useless, and suddenly he's distracted, making decisions based on emotion rather than strategy." "I never asked for any of this," I said, anger finally bubbling up. "Do you think I wanted to be claimed in front of hundreds of wolves? To be thrust into a world where everyone looks at me like I'm a problem to be solved?" "Then leave," Rydian said simply. "Walk away. Go back to your pack, your simple life. Release him from this infatuation." The word stung, because part of me feared he was right. What if this was just infatuation? What if Nathaniel's interest would fade once he realized I truly was as unremarkable as everyone believed? "I can't," I whispered. "Can't or won't." Before I could answer, a low growl cut through the air. Nathaniel stood at the garden entrance, and his eyes were blazing with fury. "Rydian," he said, voice deadly quiet. "My study. Now." The warrior's face went pale, but he bowed stiffly and stalked past me toward the keep. Nathaniel approached, and I saw the effort it took him to rein in his anger. "What did he say to you?" "Nothing I haven't thought myself," I admitted, his jaw clenched. "Vera. He's not wrong, though, is he?" I looked up at him. "I am a distraction. I am causing problems. Maybe everyone would be better off if I don't." His hands gripped my shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make me meet his eyes. "Don't let them make you doubt your worth. Don't let them convince you that you're anything less than extraordinary." "But I'm not extraordinary," I said, and I hated how my voice cracked. "I'm just me. Weak, broken me." "You are extraordinary," he insisted. "You've survived things that would break stronger wolves. You've endured cruelty and rejection and still managed to keep your compassion, your kindness. You look at me and see a person, not just a king. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Tears burned in my eyes. "I'm afraid," I whispered. "I'm afraid I'll fail you. I'm afraid you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Then we'll be afraid together," he said, pulling me into his arms. "Because I'm terrified too. Terrified that I've put you in danger by claiming you. Terrified that this world will break you. But I'm not letting you go, Vera. Not now. Not ever." I let myself lean into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. And for the first time since that night at the ceremony, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. But I had no idea how soon that hope would be tested. The attack came on a night when the moon was dark. I'd been at Shadowpine Keep for 5 weeks, and slowly, painfully slowly, I'd begun to find my footing. Celeste no longer looked at me with quite so much skepticism. Silas had actually complimented my understanding of pack dynamics. Even Margaret had smiled when I'd successfully navigated a particularly complex dinner with visiting dignitaries. And with Nathaniel, something was growing between us. Something that manifested in stolen moments. His hand finding mine under the dinner table. Conversations that stretched late into the night in the library, the way his eyes would seek me out in crowded rooms, as if making sure I was still there. It wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet, gradual, like ice, slowly melting under persistent sunlight, but it was real. That night, I'd fallen asleep in my chambers feeling something I hadn't felt in years, Contentment. Safe. I should have known better. The sound of shattering glass woke me. I sat up, heart pounding, as shouts erupted from somewhere in the keep. Then came a howl, not the ceremonial kind, but the warning kind, full of threat and violence. My door burst open. Celeste stood there, already half-shifted, her eyes glowing amber in the darkness. Get up, now, we're under attack. What? Who? No time. Move. She dragged me from the bed, throwing a robe at me. We ran through corridors that were suddenly full of chaos, guards rushing past, servants being herded to safe rooms, the smell of smoke beginning to filter through the air. Where's Nathaniel? I gasped. Fighting. Celeste pulled me down a servant's staircase, taking the steps 3 at a time. There are wolves at the gates. Mercenaries by the look of them. Someone hired them to breach the keep. We reached a reinforced room in the lower levels. A safe room, I realized, with thick stone walls and a heavy iron door. Several other non-combatants were already there. Margaret, some younger servants, an elderly advisor named Thomas who I'd met at council meetings. Stay here, Celeste commanded. Don't open this door for anyone except me, Silas, or the king. Understand? I nodded, fear clawing at my throat. Celeste, be careful. She flashed me a feral grin. Always am, little queen. Then she was gone, and the iron door slammed shut behind her. The waiting was torture. We could hear muffled sounds of fighting, howls, crashes, screams that made my blood run cold. Margaret tried to keep everyone calm, but I could see the fear in her eyes. This was Shadowpine Keep, the Alpha King's fortress. It was supposed to be impregnable. Why would anyone attack here? I asked Thomas, who sat with his eyes closed, breathing carefully. Many reasons, he said without opening his eyes, to test the king's defenses, to make a statement, to create chaos that might be exploited later. His eyes opened then, fixing on me, or to get to something, or someone, valuable. The implication made my stomach drop. You think they're here because of me? I think you've created uncertainty in the kingdom, my dear, and uncertainty makes people do desperate things. Before I could respond, the lights went out. Complete darkness engulfed us, and someone screamed. I felt bodies pressing close, heard panicked breathing. Then came a sound that made my blood freeze, scratching at the door. Not frantic, not rushed, deliberate, patient, like whatever was out there knew we were trapped, and had all the time in the world. Everyone stay quiet, Margaret whispered. The scratching continued. Then a voice, muffled through the thick door. Little Omega, I know you're in there. I didn't recognize the voice, but I recognized the tone. Predatory, amused, cruel. Your king is busy fighting my brothers upstairs, the voice continued. So many wolves, all tearing each other apart. Such a mess. And all because of you. Don't listen, Thomas breathed. He's trying to draw you out. Come out, little Omega. Come face me. Or are you going to hide behind iron and stone while others die for you? My hands clenched into fists. He was right, wasn't he? Wolves were fighting, maybe dying, and I was cowering in the dark. Useless. Weak. Everything everyone had always said I was. Vera. Margaret's hand found my arm in the darkness. Don't you dare. But the voice continued, insidious as poison. How many will die tonight, I wonder? How many bodies will pile up because the Alpha King claimed a worthless Omega? Your stepbrother was right about you. You're nothing but a burden. Something inside me cracked. All the fear, all the doubt, all the weeks of trying to prove myself and falling short. It crystallized into a sharp, painful clarity. I couldn't fight. I couldn't shift properly, but I could stop hiding. Vera, no, Margaret's grip tightened, but I pulled away. I found the door in the darkness, my fingers fumbling for the lock. Thomas tried to grab me, but I was already pulling it open, slipping through before anyone could stop me. The corridor outside was dimly lit by emergency torches. And standing there, smiling, was a wolf I didn't recognize, scarred, feral-looking, with eyes that gleamed with malice. There she is, he said, the famous Omega Queen. Behind him stood 3 others, all radiating the same mercenary violence. "You wanted me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Here I am. Let the others go." The lead wolf laughed. "Oh, sweetheart. We're not here to let anyone go. We're here to prove a point." He lunged. I'd never moved so fast in my life. Celeste's training kicked in. Not gracefully, not skillfully, but enough. I ducked under his first swipe, stumbled backward, barely avoided his second, but I was too slow, too weak. His hand caught my throat, slamming me against the wall hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. "Disappointing," he said, studying me like an interesting insect. I expected more from someone who captured the Alpha King's interest. Black spots danced in my vision. Through them, I saw his other hand rising, claws extended. Then something inside me shifted. It wasn't a full transformation. My wolf was still too weak for that. But something primal surged up, some desperate survival instinct that I'd never accessed before. My vision sharpened, my senses exploded, and for just a moment, I felt my wolf there, really there, lending me her strength. I drove my knee up hard into the mercenary's gut. His grip loosened just enough for me to twist away, gasping for air. Behind me, I heard the safe room door burst open, heard Margaret shouting for help. The mercenary recovered quickly, snarling, "You little—" A roar shook the corridor, so loud, so full of primal fury that even the mercenaries froze. Nathaniel appeared at the far end of the hallway, and he was magnificent and terrifying. Blood streaked his face and arms, his eyes blazed gold, and the air around him seemed to shimmer with barely contained violence. Behind him came Silas and Celeste, both battle-worn, but alive. "You touched her," Nathaniel said, each word precise and deadly. "You put your hands on what is mine." The lead mercenary had just enough time to look afraid before Nathaniel was on him. What followed was brutal and quick. The kind of violence that reminded everyone why Nathaniel was king, why crossing him was suicide. The other mercenaries tried to flee, but Celeste and Silas cut them off. In less than a minute, it was over. Nathaniel stood among the bodies, chest heaving, and when his eyes found me, they were still wild with rage and fear. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, his hands cupping my face, tilting my head to examine my throat where bruises were already forming. "You left the safe room," he said, voice rough. "You could have been killed." "He was going to hurt people because of me," I said. "I couldn't just hide." "You could have. You should have." His thumb brushed the bruises, and I saw his jaw clench. "If something had happened to you, but it didn't." I placed my hands over his, feeling how they trembled slightly. "I'm okay." "You're not okay. You're hurt. Because of me, because I claimed you, you're a target." The anguish in his voice was raw. "Maybe Rydian was right. Maybe I've been selfish, keeping you here, putting you in danger." "Stop." I pulled his hands down but didn't let go. "I'm here because I choose to be. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, I'm scared sometimes, but I'm not leaving." Around us, guards were arriving, beginning to secure the area. Celeste approached, blood on her hands. "Your Majesty, we've swept the keep. These were the last of them. 15 total, all mercenaries. We have 2 alive for questioning." "Who sent them?" Nathaniel demanded, not taking his eyes off me. "They're not talking yet, but we'll make them talk." Silas appeared at Celeste's shoulder, his usually calm face grim. "Nathaniel, there's something you should see. We found evidence in one of the dead mercenaries' pockets, a letter with instructions. It's complicated." Finally, Nathaniel looked away from me. "Show me." What they'd found was damning, a contract, signed by someone identified only as the benefactor, promising a fortune for creating chaos at Shadowpine Keep. The goal wasn't to kill Nathaniel. It was to prove the keep was vulnerable, to shake confidence in his rule, and specifically to remove the Omega problem. Me. I was the Omega problem. "This was orchestrated by someone with resources," Silas said as we stood in Nathaniel's study, the contract spread before us. "Someone who knows our defenses, our routines. Someone on the council," Celeste added darkly. "We don't know that," Nathaniel said, but his expression suggested he was thinking the same thing. I stared at the contract, at the clinical way it described me. The Omega problem. All those weeks of trying to prove myself, trying to fit in, and someone had been plotting to remove me. The weight of it pressed down on my shoulders. Perhaps, I started, then stopped. Perhaps what? Nathaniel's eyes fixed on me. Perhaps it would be easier if I did leave, I said quietly. If I went back to my pack, or somewhere else, then no one would need to attack the keep to get to me. No. The word was absolute. Nathaniel, be reasonable. I said no. He stood, moving around the desk to me. Do you think running will make you safe? Do you think these people will just let you go? You're connected to me now, Vera. Leaving wouldn't protect you. It would just put you somewhere I can't guard you. He's right, Celeste said reluctantly. You're marked now, little queen. Better to be marked and protected than marked and vulnerable. So what do we do? I asked. Nathaniel's expression hardened into something decisive. We find out who's behind this, and we make it clear that threatening what's mine is a death sentence. His eyes softened slightly as they met mine. And you continue your training. What you did tonight, accessing your wolf, fighting back, that was good. We build on that. I barely did anything, I protested. You survived, Silas corrected. Against a trained mercenary, you survived long enough for help to arrive. That's not nothing. Over the next week, the keep was on high alert. Guards doubled. Patrols increased. And the 2 surviving mercenaries were questioned extensively by Celeste's people. I didn't ask about their methods, but I saw the results when they finally broke and revealed a name. Counselor Bernard, the old wolf who'd questioned my worth at that first council meeting, who'd looked at me with such cold disdain, who'd apparently decided that removing me was worth hiring mercenaries and risking war. Nathaniel's fury was incandescent. The council was summoned again, but this time, the atmosphere was different. This time, Bernard stood in chains, his face ashen as evidence of his treachery was laid out before the others. You hired wolves to attack my keep, Nathaniel said, his voice deceptively calm. You ordered the death of my claimed mate. You betrayed everything this council stands for. I did it for the kingdom, Bernard spat. She's weak. She's worthless. She's dragging us down. You're so besotted with this Omega that you can't see how she's destroying everything you've built. What I see, Nathaniel said coldly, is a wolf who forgot his place. Who forgot that I am king, and my word is law. You're making us laughingstocks. Bernard's composure cracked completely. The other territories mock us. They say the great Alpha King has been tamed by a weak little Omega who can't even shift properly. They say you've gone soft, that you're distracted, that you've lost your edge, and they're right. Silence fell across the chamber. I stood beside Nathaniel's chair, feeling every eye on me, feeling the truth in Bernard's words, even as I knew they came from malice. Are they? Nathaniel's voice was silk over steel. He stood, descending from the dais with predatory grace. Have I gone soft, Bernard? Should we test that theory? The old wolf paled, taking an involuntary step back. I've killed for less than what you've done, Nathaniel continued. I've ended wolves for simple disrespect. You hired mercenaries to attack my home, to kill my mate, and you think appealing to my supposed softness will save you. Your Majesty, Bernard's voice cracked. You're right about one thing, Nathaniel said. Vera has changed me, but not in the way you think. She's made me more dangerous, not less, because now I have something worth protecting. Something worth unleashing every bit of violence I'm capable of to keep safe. He turned to the council, his gaze sweeping across them. Let Bernard's fate be a lesson. Anyone who threatens what is mine, whether through direct violence or political maneuvering, will face the same end. There are no second chances. There is no mercy. He looked at Celeste. Take him to the cells. His execution will be at dawn. As guards dragged Bernard away, Nathaniel turned to the remaining council members. Now, does anyone else have concerns about my choice of mate? Speak now, because this is your only opportunity. No one spoke. The message was clear. Acceptance or death. That night, Nathaniel found me in the library again, staring out at the moonlit mountains. You didn't have to execute him for me, I said without turning. I executed him for treason, Nathaniel corrected, settling beside me. The attack on you was part of it, but not the only part. He undermined the crown, hired foreign mercenaries, and put the entire keep at risk. Still, I finally looked at him. A man died because of me. A man died because of his own choices. Nathaniel's hand found mine. Don't take on guilt that isn't yours, Vera. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked, what he said about the other territories mocking you, is that true? Probably. Nathaniel said with a shrug. Let them mock. Their opinions mean nothing. They mean something to you, I countered. You built this kingdom, fought for it, bled for it, and now people are questioning your strength because of me. Then I'll prove them wrong. He turned to face me fully. Vera, I need you to understand something. Before you, I was strong, yes. I was feared. I was respected. But I was also alone in ways that made that strength hollow. You've given me something to fight for beyond just power. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me more dangerous than I've ever been. I want to believe that, I whispered. Then believe it. He lifted our joined hands, pressing a kiss to my knuckles, and believe this. I choose you. Every day, every moment, I choose you. Not because I'm under some spell, not because I've gone soft, but because you're the only person who looks at me and sees someone worth knowing beyond the crown. Tears burned in my eyes. I'm still afraid I'll fail you. Then fail, he said simply. Fall down, make mistakes, struggle, and I'll be there to catch you, to help you up, to stand with you while you try again. That's what this is, Vera. Not perfection. Partnership. And there, in the quiet of the library with moonlight streaming through the windows, something fundamental shifted between us. The slow burn that had been building for weeks finally caught fire. Not in passion, not yet, but in certainty. Whatever came next, we would face it together. 3 months after the attack, spring came to Shadowpine Keep. The change in seasons seemed to mirror something shifting within me. Under Celeste's relentless training, my body had grown stronger, more capable. I could defend myself now, not perfectly, not against the most skilled warriors, but enough. My wolf, though still weaker than most, had become more present, more responsive. I could shift now, fully, though the transformation left me exhausted in ways it didn't seem to affect other wolves. But I was doing it. I was surviving. More than surviving, actually. I was learning to thrive. Silas had declared me competent in pack politics, which from him was practically effusive praise. Margaret beamed with pride when I successfully hosted a dinner for visiting alphas without a single misstep. Even Rydian, who'd been demoted and reassigned after his confrontation with me in the gardens, had grudgingly admitted I wasn't completely useless. High praise indeed. But the most significant change was between Nathaniel and me. What had started as a claiming born of instinct and impulse had deepened into something real and chosen. We'd learned each other slowly, his tendency to shoulder every burden alone, my habit of doubting my own worth, his unexpected gentleness in private moments, my growing courage when it mattered most. The way he unconsciously sought my presence in crowded rooms, the way I'd started to anticipate his moods and needs. It was Silas who finally voiced what everyone had been thinking. You should make it official, he said one morning during one of our tutoring sessions. The claiming was public, but you haven't had a formal bonding ceremony. The kingdom needs that certainty, that symbol. My heart stuttered. A bonding ceremony? But I'm better than I was, but I'm not... Not what? Silas leveled me with one of his penetrating stares. Not perfect? Good. Perfection is boring and impossible. You're real, Vera. You're someone who failed and got back up. Someone who was afraid and acted anyway. That's what the kingdom needs to see. Not another untouchable figure on a throne, but someone who understands struggle. Does Nathaniel want this? I asked quietly. Silas smiled, a rare, genuine expression. Why don't you ask him yourself? I found Nathaniel in the training yards, working through sword forms with an intensity that suggested he was working off frustration. He moved like water and violence, each strike precise and deadly. Watching him, I felt that now familiar flutter in my chest. Attraction, yes, but also something deeper. Trust. Understanding. Love. though neither of us had spoken the word yet. "You're staring," he said without breaking his form. "You're worth staring at," I replied, then felt my face heat. He finished his sequence and turned to me, a slight smile playing at his lips. He was sweating, hair falling into his eyes, and somehow he'd never looked more appealing. "What brings you to the training yards, my lady?" "Silas thinks we should have a formal bonding ceremony." The smile faded, replaced by something more serious. "And what do you think?" I stepped closer, into the space that was becoming naturally ours. "I think I'm terrified. A ceremony means everyone watching, judging, waiting for me to prove I don't belong. It means making this permanent in ways that can't be undone." "True," Nathaniel said, setting aside his sword. "It also means standing before the kingdom and claiming each other by choice, not just instinct. It means showing them that we're certain." His hand came up to cup my face. "Are you? Certain?" I thought about the past 3 months, the struggle, the fear, the slow building of something real between us. I thought about how he made me feel seen, valued, stronger than I'd ever believed I could be. I thought about how I'd come to understand the man behind the crown, his loneliness, his burdens, his unexpected tenderness. "Yes," I said, "I'm certain." His smile this time was radiant. "Then we'll have a ceremony. And Vera? Anyone who still doubts you after these months can answer to me." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Margaret was in her element, coordinating with seamstresses, decorators, caterers. The ceremony would be held during the full moon, following ancient tradition. Wolves from every pack in the kingdom would attend. This was more than just a wedding, it was a political statement, a unifying moment. "You need to understand what this means," Celeste said during one of our final training sessions. "Once you're formally bonded, you're not just Nathaniel's mate, you're the queen. Every challenge to you becomes a challenge to the throne. Every success strengthens the kingdom. The stakes are higher." "No pressure, then," I muttered. Celeste grinned. "Oh, there's plenty of pressure, but you can handle it. You've already survived an assassination attempt and political intrigue. A ceremony will be easy by comparison." She was wrong about that. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, watching moonlight paint the mountains silver, and felt the weight of what was coming. Tomorrow I would stand before hundreds, maybe thousands, of wolves and bond myself to the Alpha King. Tomorrow I would become queen in truth, not just in title. A knock at my door pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting Margaret with some last-minute adjustment. Instead, Nathaniel entered, and the sight of him made my breath catch. He wore simple sleep clothes, his hair loose around his shoulders, and the vulnerability in his expression was almost painful to witness. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. "No." He crossed to stand beside me at the window. "I keep thinking about what I'm asking you to take on. The responsibility, the danger, the scrutiny. You didn't choose this life, Vera. I forced it on you that night at the ceremony." "You claimed me," I corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" He turned to face me fully. "Because I keep wondering if I was selfish. If I saw something I wanted and took it without considering the cost to you." I studied him, this powerful, complex man who'd somehow become the center of my world. "Do you regret it, claiming me?" "Never," he said immediately. "But I regret the pain it's caused you. The struggle, the doubt, the people who've tried to hurt you because of me." "Nathaniel." I took his hands, feeling their warmth, their strength. "I won't lie and say it's been easy. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also been the most worthwhile. Before you, I was invisible, worthless in my own eyes. I'd accepted that I would never matter, never be more than a burden to be tolerated." "You were never worthless," he said fiercely. "Maybe not, but I believed I was. And you saw something different. You made me believe I could be different." I squeezed his hands. "So no, I don't think you were selfish. I think you were brave enough to want something beyond duty and obligation. and you made me brave enough to reach for something I never thought I deserved." He pulled me close, resting his forehead against mine. "Tomorrow," he murmured, "I'm going to stand before the entire kingdom and bond myself to you. And I want you to know, it's not about politics or duty or producing heirs. It's because you're the only person who's ever made me feel less alone." "You're not alone," I whispered. "Not anymore. Neither of us are." We stood like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other. Then Nathaniel pulled back slightly, his expression shifting to something almost mischievous. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. I was going to wait until after the ceremony, but I think now is better. He held out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not ornate or ostentatious, but beautiful in its simplicity. A silver band with a moonstone that seemed to glow with inner light. "It was my mother's," Nathaniel said quietly, "the only thing I have left of her. She died when I was young, and I've kept this all these years, thinking maybe someday I'd find someone worthy of wearing it." Tears blurred my vision. "Nathaniel, I can't. It's too precious." "You're precious," he interrupted. "You're the most precious thing in my life. And I want you to have it, not as the queen, but as Vera, as the woman who somehow saw past every wall I built and found something worth loving." The word hung in the air between us. Love. Neither of us had said it before, too cautious, too afraid. But now it was there, spoken and real. "I love you too," I whispered. "I think I was just too scared to say it." He slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, and then kissed me with a tenderness that made my heart ache. It was a promise, a commitment, a beginning. When we finally pulled apart, he smiled. "Get some sleep, my love. Tomorrow, we show the kingdom exactly who we are." The ceremony took place in the great hall, which had been transformed into something from a dream. Thousands of candles cast flickering light across stone walls draped with silver and white. Flowers, moonflowers appropriately, filled every available space, their sweet scent mixing with pine and earth. And wolves, so many wolves, filled the hall, representatives from every pack in the kingdom, all gathered to witness. I stood in an anteroom, Margaret fussing with my dress one final time. It was beautiful. Simple white silk that flowed like water, with delicate silver embroidery along the hem and sleeves. My blonde hair was loose except for small braids woven with moonflowers, and I wore my mother's locket alongside Nathaniel's ring. "You look like a queen," Margaret said, tears in her eyes. "I feel like I'm going to be sick," I admitted. "That's normal." Celeste appeared in the doorway, dressed in formal attire that somehow made her look even more dangerous. "But you'll be fine. Just remember, every wolf out there who doubted you has watched you survive, grow, and refuse to quit. You've already won, Vera. This is just the victory ceremony." Silas joined us, offering his arm. "Ready?" "No. Yes. Maybe. Ready," I said. The doors opened, and music swelled. Ancient, haunting, beautiful. I stepped into the great hall, and every eye turned to me. For a moment, the old fear tried to surface, the instinct to shrink, to hide, to make myself small. Then I saw Nathaniel waiting at the far end of the hall, standing beneath an arch of woven branches, and everything else fell away. He wore black and silver, every inch the Alpha King, but his eyes held only warmth as he watched me approach. In that gaze, I found courage. In his slight smile, I found strength. The walk down that aisle was the longest of my life, but I kept my head high, my steps steady. When I finally reached him, he took my hands, and I felt the rightness of it settle into my bones. The ceremony itself was ancient, the words spoken in the old language that predated modern pacts, but the essence was clear, a pledge of loyalty, of love, of choosing each other above all others. When it came time for the bonding, the mark that would tie us together permanently, I offered my neck without hesitation. Nathaniel's bite was brief, more symbolic than painful, and I felt the snap of connection that bloomed between us. Then it was my turn, and though my wolf was weaker, the mark I left on him was just as binding. When we turned to face the assembled wolves as bonded mates, as king and queen, The hall erupted in howls of approval. Not everyone was happy. I could see a few sour faces in the crowd. But most recognized what this meant. Stability, unity, a new chapter for the kingdom. The celebration that followed was overwhelming in the best way. Wolves who'd once looked at me with disdain now offered genuine congratulations. Alpha Helena, whose daughter I'd supposedly insulted by being chosen instead, actually smiled at me. "You've surprised us all," she said, in the best possible way. Even more surprising was when several of the younger unmated wolves sought me out, asking advice about navigating pack politics, about finding confidence when the world tried to diminish them. "You've become a symbol," Silas observed, appearing at my elbow with wine. "For every wolf who's ever felt like they didn't fit, who's been told they're not enough, you've shown them that strength comes in unexpected forms." "I didn't do anything special," I protested. "You survived," Celeste said, joining us. "You refused to give up. You chose to stay when leaving would have been easier. That's everything, little queen." As the night wore on and celebration continued, Nathaniel pulled me aside to a balcony overlooking the mountains. The moon was full and brilliant, painting everything silver. "How are you feeling?" he asked, arm around my waist. "Overwhelmed, happy, terrified, complete." I leaned into him. "Is that normal?" "I have no idea," he admitted. "I've never done this before, but if those are the things you're feeling, then I'm feeling them too." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight, listening to the celebration behind us. After a while, Nathaniel spoke again. "I have a confession," he said. "That night at the ceremony, when I first saw you, it wasn't just attraction or instinct. It was recognition. I looked at you and saw someone who understood what it meant to be alone in a crowd, to carry burdens no one else could see. I saw someone who might understand me in ways no one ever had." "And do I?" I asked. "Understand you? Better than anyone," he said simply. "You see the king, but you also see Nathaniel, the man who gets tired, who doubts, who sometimes wishes he could walk away from all the responsibility. You see all of it, and you stay anyway, because I love all of it," I said. "The king and the man. The strength and the vulnerability, all of you." He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face with infinite gentleness. "I spent so many years thinking I had to be alone to be strong, that needing someone was weakness, but you've taught me that strength comes from connection, from having someone to fight for, to fight beside. You've made me better, Vera. You've made me whole. You've done the same for me," I whispered. "I was so lost before you, so convinced I was worthless. You showed me I could be more than what others believed. You gave me a chance to become someone I'm proud to be." "Then we saved each other," Nathaniel said. "And we'll keep saving each other, every day, for the rest of our lives." When he kissed me, it was with a promise of partnership, of love, of a future built together. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly, completely home. The following months brought their own challenges, of course. There were still wolves who questioned, still political maneuverings to navigate, still moments when doubt tried to creep back in. But everything was different now. I had found my place, not by being perfect, not by becoming someone I wasn't, but by learning to value the person I was. My compassion, my resilience, my ability to see beyond surfaces. These weren't weaknesses. They were strengths that complemented Nathaniel's power, that brought balance to the kingdom. Together, we were formidable. Celeste continued my training, but now it was less about proving myself and more about honing skills I would actually need. Silas became not just a tutor, but a friend, someone who offered counsel when political waters grew treacherous. Even Rydian eventually came around, acknowledging that perhaps he'd been wrong about me. "You're tougher than you look, little queen," he said one day, and from him, it was practically a declaration of devotion. But the greatest transformation was in how I saw myself. When I looked in the mirror now, I no longer saw the weak Omega who didn't belong. I saw a queen, not despite my struggles, but because of them. I saw someone who'd faced impossible odds and survived, someone who'd taken pain and transformed it into compassion, fear into courage. I saw someone worthy of the life I'd been given. One evening, nearly 6 months after the bonding ceremony, Nathaniel found me in our private chambers. No longer separate rooms, but shared space that reflected both of us. I was curled in a chair by the fire, reading, and he settled beside me with a contented sigh. "Long day?" I asked, marking my place. "They're all long days," he said. "But coming home to you makes them worthwhile." I set aside my book and turned to face him. "I've been thinking." "Dangerous," he teased. "I want to start a program," I said. "For young wolves who struggle, who don't fit the traditional mold. Training, support, a place where they can develop their own strengths instead of being forced into boxes that don't fit." Nathaniel's expression shifted to interest. "Like you." "Like I was," I corrected. "I had to fight so hard just to survive, and I was lucky. I had you eventually, but there are others out there who don't have that, who are told every day that they're worthless because they don't meet some arbitrary standard of strength." "You want to change that," Nathaniel said, and there was pride in his voice. "I want to try, with your support." I took his hand. "Use my position to actually help, not just be a figurehead." "You've never been just a figurehead," he said firmly. "But yes, you have my complete support. Build your program, change the kingdom, show everyone what real strength looks like." And I did. Over the following year, we established sanctuaries in every major territory, places where struggling wolves could find training, support, and community, where being different was celebrated rather than condemned, where young wolves could learn that there were many paths to strength, many ways to matter. It wasn't easy. There was resistance, skepticism, wolves who thought we were wasting resources on the weak. But slowly, minds changed. Especially when wolves from our program started succeeding, started proving that with the right support, anyone could thrive. I became known throughout the kingdom not just as the Alpha King's mate, but as the queen who understood struggle, who fought for the forgotten, who proved that compassion could coexist with strength. And Nathaniel, my mate, my partner, my love, stood beside me through all of it, supporting my vision while I supported his. We balanced each other perfectly, his decisive power and my empathetic wisdom, creating something stronger than either of us could be alone. On the anniversary of our bonding ceremony, we stood once again on that balcony overlooking the mountains, moonlight painting the world silver. "Do you remember what you asked me that first night?" I said. "In your study?" "I asked if you knew what it was like to be surrounded by wolves and still feel completely alone," Nathaniel recalled. "I'm not alone anymore," I said simply. "Neither of us are." He pulled me close, and I felt the bond between us humming with contentment, with love that had been tested and proven true. "No," he agreed, "we're not alone. We have each other. We have our pack. We have purpose. We have home," I added, "not a place, but a feeling of belonging, of being exactly where we're supposed to be." "Together," Nathaniel said. "Together," I echoed. And as the moon reached its zenith above Shadowpine Keep, illuminating the kingdom we'd built together, I knew with absolute certainty that my mother had been right all those years ago. I had been stronger than I knew. I had learned to shine in the darkness. And I had found exactly where I belonged.